I can still remember being up in the cabin and waking up to the sound of sizzling bacon and eggs and the smell of my grandmother's famous blueberry muffins, which I still love to this day. At the cabin, we'd go out in the back and wade through the creek. We'd run through the woods, kill rattlesnakes, and hike to the cave. In the evening, we'd drink root beer from glass bottles and sit on the deck, watching the sun go down. I always loved being up at the cabin with my grandparents. My grandparents are part of what's called the greatest generation. I call it the generation of the good old days, because it was the good old days of America, of American industrialism, of building real things like cars, trucks, denim, and steel, not microwave junk and imports from China. It was the good old days of real American values like honesty, integrity, and hard work, not entitlement and laziness and corruption. It was when you did a deal and you sealed it with a handshake, and your word was your bond. It was a wonderful time of classic muscle cars, being able to leave your door unlocked, relax on the porch with a lemonade, and play baseball in the sandlot. Now, over the years, the cabin was replaced with Grandpa's ranch, and I loved going down there because there's this huge old oak tree right next to a little stream that runs through the property. I loved being able to go down there and slow down. I could lean up against the oak tree in the shade and take a deep breath and just think. Now, obviously, not all of the good old days were good. After falling in love with the market because of the sexy promises of fast money on Wall Street, and getting burned in events like the Great Depression and dealing with World War II, the greatest generation figured out that they would take a cautious approach with their money. They weren't going to lose it again. Those days were just too painful to repeat. They'd seen what happens when you risk your money and lose it. And for years, literally decades, this generation saved their money safely and securely, not risking it and gambling it in Wall Street. Coming out of the Great Depression and World War II, the greatest generation took a cautious approach to financial planning, investing, and retirement. They believed in guarantees and safety. They saved their money. It's not surprising considering in 1929 the stock crash that lost people fortunes, and the financial collapse and insolvency of over 10,000 banks. After these horrible events, people avoided stocks and equity markets like the plague. In fact, in 1952, 23 years after the '29 crash, stockholders represented only 4% of the American population. And what's amazing is that in 1980, a full 50 years later, that number had only increased by 9%. Then the 401k was created, and from 1980 in just 18 short years, a full 52% of Americans were gambling their money in the market. You've probably heard fools forget history and are doomed to repeat it. So in learning from the greatest generation, what did they do if they didn't invest in the stock market? According to Barry Dyke, author of the powerful expose, The Pirates of Manhattan, they saved their money in guaranteed income contracts. In fact, nearly 50% of every dollar saved during these years actually went into these guaranteed income contracts. Why? Because the companies who managed them didn't lose money when the market crashed in 1929. They didn't lose money in 1939 when the market dropped 89%, or in 73 when the Dow dropped 45%, or in 2008 when it dropped another 40%, or in 2011 when it dropped again. On top of that, it's an industry with an unparalleled track record. Many of the companies have been around over 100 years, some for over 300 years. And several of these long-lasting companies had clients like Sir Isaac Newton and Babe Ruth. The terrible events of the Depression and World War II taught the greatest generation a thing or two about safety, guarantees, and quality. In fact, just the other day, we were headed to Walsburg to see an antique show. And on the way, my father and I stopped at the cemetery to visit my fourth great-grandfather's grave. He came to the United States of America from the Jersey Island in England and actually settled the town of Walsburg, where we continued on to attend their annual antique show. I was amazed at the tractors we saw. Some were 80, even 100 years old, and they still fired up and ran almost as good as new. In today's microwave society, we're lucky to keep something running for a few years, let alone a decade or a century. It's unfortunate that the wisdom learned by our forefathers has been forgotten over time by most people. But not everybody. There are still those who value a good, hard day's work, who love their family and want to keep their money safe, and they're doing it the same way it has always been done, using guaranteed income contracts that protect your wealth from crashes, that provide income you can count on for the rest of your life, and a retirement that's backed by real companies that have stood the test of time through world wars, recessions, and depressions. In fact, new innovations have allowed these contracts to combat inflation by actually increasing your income throughout your retirement, so you aren't stuck in the fixed income trap. It's not Wall Street's darling. In fact, it's far from it. It's not sexy, but you know it's going to be there for you come rain or shine. And if you want to learn more about protecting your wealth from crashes, taxes, and inflation, you can actually request a personal analysis that will show you exactly how it can work for you with a member of our team. Anyone can experience the security and peace that comes from returning to what our parents and grandparents learned during the good old days. Tens of thousands of Americans are returning to those wise principles of hard work, honesty, entrepreneurship, and saving for the future. For them, the days of hot apple pie, lemonade on the porch, and happy memories that last a lifetime are still happening every day.